an informal Trump campaign advisor in 2016. Malek says investigators asked him about Republican operative Roger Stone and about Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. And they subpoenaed him to appear before Mueller's grand jury in April. What does this new development tell us about where Mueller's probe is headed next? We'll talk about that. Plus, President Trump increasingly isolated inside his own White House, moving trusted aide Dan Scavino, his social media director, into the small office near the president's desk, the space occupied until yesterday by Hope Hicks, Trump's longtime aide, who no longer works in the West Wing. And Moscow flexing its muscles for the U.S. and all the world to see. Russia's defense ministry released the launch of its new intercontinental ballistic missile nicknamed Satan II. Interesting. A lot of ground to cover tonight. I want to bring in now senior political commentator David Axelrod, a former senior advisor to President Obama. David, good to have you on. Good evening.
See you, Don.
So Robert Mueller's investigation is moving full steam ahead. We're now learning a new name we haven't heard before. Trump campaign advisor Ted Malek detained by the FBI at Boston's Logan Airport as he returned from London. Malek says investigators asked him questions about Trump confidant Roger Stone and WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Where is this investigation going? Do you know?
You know, what's interesting to me is not where it's going, but how much it's reinforcing those stories that we've known for a long time. For example, Roger Stone. How did he seem to have the bead on what WikiLeaks was going to do? That's obviously something that Robert Mueller wants to know. And he is talking to people who may have some insights into that. Malek, in addition to a relationship with Stone, also is close to Nigel Farage, the leader of the UKIP party in Britain, who is a supporter of Donald Trump, who also has some ties to Assange. So that's one element of it. We know with the filing of Rick Gates, about Rick Gates and about his ongoing contacts with a Russian operative, he's looking at that issue of, was there a pipeline between the Trump campaign and the Russians? So what is very clear is that some of these matters that people had been dismissing as not relevant as they focused on this obstruction of justice issue are very much still under examination by the special counsel.
David, let's switch gears now. A senior administration official says some aides to the president were surprised by President Trump's comments that the U.S. will be withdrawing from Syria soon, especially given what he said in the past. Watch this.
One of the things I think you've noticed about me is militarily, I don't like to say where I'm going and what I'm doing.
I don't want to telegraph what I'm doing or what I'm thinking. I'm not like other administrations where they say we're going to do this in 4 weeks, and that doesn't work that way.
I don't want to be one of these guys that say, yes, here's what we're going to do. I don't have to do that.
Well, David, the question is, isn't this exactly what the president said he'd never do, telegraph military moves?
Well, what's interesting is the one group of people he didn't telegraph his move to was members of his own administration who seemed to be completely surprised by what he said. Listen, Don, we talked about this, I think, last week. There's something going on with the president. I think he's come to the conclusion that his instincts got him to where he is. He's tired of being bridled. He's tired of being told what he can and can't do, and he's winging it. And he went out there in front of the crowd and he did his sort of improv act. And, it plays very well. Remember, Donald Trump as a candidate was an anti-interventionist. He was not for putting more troops anywhere. So he was going back to basics in front of that crowd. But the fact is, he did send more troops to Syria. There is an ongoing operation there. It is a delicate time. It does involve Iran and Russia and a very volatile region. And to just go up there and wing it and surprise your own people is a stunning thing to do. He also sort of improbably suggested that he wasn't going to sign the trade agreement that he reached with South Korea that the administration had been touting all week because he was now holding it as a negotiating tool, as leverage, he said. Apparently people didn't realize he was going to say that either. This is a heck of a way to run a government. And so, yes, he is in one way signaling something that he might do. We don't know if he actually will follow through on Syria. But the most disturbing thing is that he's not telegraphing anything or discussing anything, apparently, with his own team. And that can only lead to catastrophe down the line.
Let's talk about Russia now, because Russia stoked more tensions, David, today with the launch of the Satan II missile. It's capable of carrying a dozen or more nuclear warhead and can reach anywhere in the U.S. Vladimir Putin brags it's invincible. What message is he sending to the U.S.?
Well, clearly, he is menacing not just the U.S. but the world. He's feeling emboldened. He's feeling emboldened in part, I think, because the president has not been very tough on him, to say the least. Now, what was done this week in terms of expelling the diplomats was a real gesture on the part of the U.S. It was done in concert with the rest of the world, which was a tough move. And this, in part, may have been a response from Putin to that. But, ultimately, there are whole cards the president has, like imposing the sanctions that Congress has authorized against the oligarchs who are close to Putin, that would really strike some fear in his heart. President has declined to do that. And again, it remains a mystery as to why someone who is so bellicose and so willing to challenge people, large and small, wherever he finds them, has such a hard time standing up to Vladimir Putin.
Yeah. David, thank you. I want you to stand by because I want to bring in now Congressman Ted Lieu, California Democrat who sits on the Judiciary Committee. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us on this Easter Friday, or this Good Friday. Listen, Mueller moving in on another campaign advisor. We've been talking about Ted Malloch. He's the FBI. The FBI is detaining, I should say, and questioning him this week. What does this tell you about the investigation?
The fact that the press and the public keep learning about new names shows that the FBI and Special Counsel Mueller have a very expansive investigation. They know a lot that we don't know, and they're investigating not just obstruction of justice, but in this case, it's straight up collusion. Did the Trump campaign know that Russia had these emails of Hillary Clinton, and did they use that when they campaigned? And so, then that is collusion.
Mm-hmm. Malloch said Mueller's team seemed to focus on Roger Stone.
And what Russia did is they used WikiLeaks to weaponize these emails and then distribute them across America to hurt Secretary Clinton, help Donald Trump. And if any Trump campaign official was involved in that, that is straight up conspiracy, that is collusion, and those are federal crimes.
So, Congressman Lieu, we're also learning the Attorney General rebuffed Republican leaders who wanted him to appoint a second special counsel to investigate how the DOJ and the FBI handled investigations related to Hillary Clinton and a former Trump campaign advisor. Did Jeff Sessions make the right call?
He absolutely did. So the House Republicans seem very intent on trying to impeach Hillary Clinton with these investigations. But guess what? She's not the president. She's a private citizen. We should be focused on the president. Did he engage in misconduct? Did his campaign engage in misconduct? And the Republicans are just trying to distract from the special counsel investigation. Sessions
is apparently leaving the door open to another special counsel. He asked Obama-appointed U.S. attorney to work with the DOJ's inspector general to determine whether a second special counsel is necessary, saying, and this is a quote, "I am confident that Mr. Huber's review will indicate a full, complete, and objective evaluation of these matters in a manner that is consistent with the law and the facts." So if the Attorney General appoints a second special counsel after relying on input from John Huber, would you support that?
I would. John Huber is known to be a man of his word. He was appointed both by a Democratic president as well as a Republican president. And I will wait for his review. And if he says a second special counsel should be appointed, I would support that.
I've got to ask you about your colleague, Congresswoman Elizabeth Estes, her decision to continue to employ her chief of staff, Tony Baker, after she learned detailed allegations of physical abuse against his now ex-girlfriend. She kept him on for some 3 months, helped him with a positive recommendation letter, and signed a legal document preventing her from discussing why he left. She's from Connecticut, and the Hartford Courant is calling for her to resign. She's refusing. What do you think should happen in this case? What
her chief of staff did was completely unacceptable. Employees should not be threatened, whether they are on Capitol Hill or in the private sector. Congresswoman Esty has apologized for her handling of this situation. Based on the one article I've read so far on this issue, I am not calling for her resignation, but that is her decision, and we'll wait to see what more facts may come out.
Congressman Ted Lieu, thank you. I appreciate your time. Happy Easter to you.
Thank you.
Back now with David Axelrod. David, I got a question for you. I wanted to ask you, I'm glad you're back. So today also the first day of the Trump presidency without Hope Hicks, and it doesn't look like a replacement communications director will be announced anytime soon. Is that a mistake, and what impact do you think that'll have on White House operations?
Well, I think it is a mistake, although I think her role was more important in terms of her ability to talk to the president and in ways that other people apparently could not, and that will be missed greatly. But every White House should have a communications director, should have a functioning chief of staff, and the kinds of things that presidents need to run a very complex organization. It's not the Trump organization, and the president's going to discover that very quickly.
So, David, I want to ask you about the interview you did for your show with your friend. We talked about it a little bit last week.
Yes.
Sir Charles Barkley. David, you got
Yes,
his
sir.
thoughts on the president. Listen first, and then we'll talk about it.
Listen, I never talk bad about the president. I'm going to be factual. I've never been more angry and disgusted at this situation than I am now. This turmoil every single day, the tweeting, the hiring and firing, like, dude, I'm blessed and you are too. Like, it really ain't gonna have a big effect on our life. But I actually have humanity. I want everybody to have a good life.
He does not hold back.
No, he's not. He doesn't. That's a great thing about Charles. He speaks his mind. You know, much like Trump, he's a much different person, but he's utterly authentic. He says what's on his mind, and he's had a lot of thoughts about a lot of things, many of which would surprise people, Don. I really hope people, if they're watching the Final Four, I hope they record the show or else watch it when it's on tomorrow night at 7.
Don't underestimate yourself, David Axelrod. I'm sure they will be watching.
Well, I'm not. I'm sober about the Loyola Ramblers. I think a lot of people are going to want to watch them, you know, as a Chicagoan.
Absolutely. Hey, David, we always appreciate it, and we're going to be watching tomorrow. Thank you so
All right,
much.
Don.
Happy
Happy
to you.
Easter.
Yeah,
Thank
happy
you.
Easter. Be sure to check out The Axe Files with David Axelrod tomorrow night at 7 Eastern, right here on CNN. And just ahead, more on our breaking news coverage. Federal investigators detaining and questioning Ted Malloch. Malloch is a former Trump campaign advisor, asking him about Republican operative Roger Stone and WikiLeaks. Is Stone a key focus of Robert Mueller's investigation into possible collusion? I'm going to ask my national security experts about that next. Breaking news tonight, Special Counsel Robert Mueller's team reaching yet again into a 2016 Trump campaign, questioning a man who says he was an informal advisor. I want to talk about this now with CNN national security analyst Juliette Kayyem. Juliette is a former official at the Department of Homeland Security, and national security analyst Steve Hall, retired chief of CIA Russian operations, and Michael Moore, a former U.S. attorney. Good evening, everyone. Steve, let's start with you. We learned a new name today that wasn't on anyone's radar. That name is Ted Malloch, a former Trump campaign advisor. Why was the FBI asking him about Roger Stone and WikiLeaks?
Yeah, you know, there's this continuing issue of the connection between Roger Stone and WikiLeaks because of the unique role that WikiLeaks played in disseminating the stolen information from the DNC. So I can only assume there's a connection there. My only knowledge about this guy is that he seems to be a deep state guy, which always, for me, calls into question his credibility. But, you know, Mueller's the one running the investigation and thinks it's important to talk to him. So that's good enough for me.
Yeah. Juliette, the FBI asked Malloch if he had ever been to the Ecuadorian embassy. That's where WikiLeaks found Julian Assange has been holed up for nearly 6 years now. Does the FBI think Malloch was an intermediary of some sort?
It sounds like it. I have to say, in the CNN's reporting, that was the one sentence that stood out at me because it was so specific. It wasn't, you know, what was your relationship to the Trump campaign? You know, what did you know? What did Roger Stone know? It was literally, did you enter the building? Which makes me think they either know he entered the building, because one has to assume that we're watching at all times, or someone else entered the building and had a meeting with Julian Assange, and they're just trying to figure out what he knows. He claims, he's said something publicly that he did not enter the building, and so, we'll just question his credibility. But it was that one sentence that I think there's a lot of meaning behind, because it was so specific about a visit to Julian Assange.
So it was Roger Stone, Michael, who claimed multiple times that he had contact with Julian Assange and seemed to know ahead of time about the hack of the DNC and John Podesta. He later denied both. Do you think Stone is key to making the collusion case?
I think he certainly may be a part of it. Let me tell you, these interviews and these investigations, and certainly when we're talking about Malak or Stone, these things don't happen just sort of willy-dilly, just off the cuff. These agents, when they come and talk to you, they basically have some idea where they're going. They may already know, and typically do know, the answers to the questions that they're asking you. And this is a chance for them to fill you out as a potential witness. It's a chance to fill you out if you're going to be truthful as things go on. If there's places they can put pressure on you, they usually know the answers before they get there. What it tells me, though, is just like we're talking about Roger Stone, it also kind of tells me we might be talking a little bit about Little Don, and that is, he's the one that was involved with the Russian meeting in Trump Tower. He's the one that's had the information shared from that he didn't disclose the meeting. That pushes it back toward the events on Air Force One to do a cover up. That to me seems a likely path that Mueller may be exploring right now.
Little Don. All right, we'll go with that. So, Steve, they questioned Malak for an hour, confiscated his cell phone, and handed him a subpoena on the spot to appear before the grand jury. Is that an indication that they think that he is holding out on them, or is it a tactic?
It may be a little bit of both. I mean, obviously, whenever you relieve somebody of their electronics, you're looking for a trail. You're looking for things that they might not perhaps admit to immediately. It also has a psychological impact. But getting back to Juliette's comment, it's very interesting. There's been a number of questions as to how Julian Assange from inside that embassy was able to get information in and out aside from electronics, because there was an obvious assumption that his electronics were being monitored. And there's a question as to whether or not there was actually a person, a mule, who, carried, a thumb drive or something in and out. And I wonder whether or not that is also what they're trying to get into and try to find out whether, who it was who was actually doing this.
So, Michael, Malak issued a statement saying that he was an informal advisor to Trump, had only met Stone 3 times and never visited the Ecuadorian embassy. And this, he said, "What could they want from me? A policy wonk and philosophical defender of Trump. I am not an operative, have no Russia contacts, and aside from appearing on air and in print often to defend and congratulate our president, have done nothing wrong." What message does that send? So apparently that didn't satisfy the FBI. What more will they be asking him?
Well, I mean, I think if you just look at his statement on its face, I mean, even where he says he's had no Russian contacts, I mean, half the administration now apparently has said that, but we know that's just not true. So I don't put much credibility in what he's saying at this point. Where they go with him again, I mean, I think it's likely that they already know the answer to these questions, and maybe it is that he's a mule in and out. Maybe he's got information that Stone's a mule in and out. Whatever the case may be, they probably know the answer, but they're just looking to see, can they use this guy? Can they move him in the direction of being a cooperating witness to testify, or a corroborating witness that they can use to back up information that they developed somewhere else?
Juliet, aside from Stone, there are all these ties. Check out your screen right here. This is to all these ties, right? We don't have all night, so I won't read them all, right? The contacts go on and on. How can the president possibly say his campaign had nothing to do with Russia when these links are apparent on their face, Juliet?
Yeah, you can't rationally look at this and say that the Trump campaign had nothing to do with Russia. Because remember, that is where they began. So we have to that is now just a joke of an explanation by all of them. So the question now is, as we all know, is what was the extent, nature, duration, and who within the Trump campaign was directing it? We're getting very close to Trump himself now. I mean, we've got Don Jr. in the room. We've got Jared doing all sorts of funky stuff. So we're there. Like, I mean, we keep waiting for when will we know? Like, I'm looking at this, we're there. And, yes, there's questions of intent, there's questions of direction. But what we do know, just stepping aside and looking back, is the Trump campaign was infiltrated and had contacts with Russians for over, beginning in 2015. And it wasn't just these hangers on and losers. It was in Trump Tower. Intent and consequences is something that Mueller is looking at now. But I'm done sort of, pretending that I haven't been pretending, but you have to begin with the facts. And the facts are just telling you this was a campaign that was so cozy with Russia that Trump himself or others around him were aware of it, and possibly compromised by it. And that's the question.
Juliet, Steve, and Michael. Happy Easter, happy Passover. I appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
When we come back, we're going to tell you who's moved into Hope Hicks' former office, if he has a shot at her job, and what his chief qualification could be.
The most trusted name in news.
Today begins a new chapter for President Trump. This is the first day that Hope Hicks, his trusted aide, who was White House communications director, is not at his side. Her office was steps away from the Oval Office. Here to discuss now, CNN political analyst Ryan Lizza, CNN political commentators Matt Lewis, and Alice Stewart. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Happy holiday Friday. And what is it? Good Friday.
Good Friday.
So Ryan, Hope is gone. Hope Hicks, that is, and sources tell CNN the White House.
In general.
Yeah. Well, it depends on who you ask. So it tells the White House that White House may not even fill her job, and aides are worried that the president will unravel without her. What are you hearing, Ryan?
I mean, I think the big picture of all of the recent changes, Hope Hicks leaving, John Kelly being sort of neutered, emasculated, Larry Kudlow moving into the economic advisor job, and Bolton, the sort of pundits, the sort of Fox pundits coming on, is what you're seeing is the end of the era where they tried to have a White House, a traditional White House with a strong chief of staff, and the beginning of a new era where Trump is a little bit more confident in picking the personnel that he wants, and he's making these decisions almost unilaterally, it seems. And you're getting a whole new staffing structure that is much more similar to the way Trump ran things in his own business empire, and that is individuals reporting right into him, and rather than through a strong chief of staff. We've seen White Houses that have set up that process before. The Ford White House tried it. The Carter White House tried it because after Nixon, a lot of people blamed Watergate on having a chief of staff that was too strong. And both those presidents abandoned it because it ended in a disaster. So I think that's like the big picture.
What are you saying about
structure.
the chief of staff there, Ryan? What are you saying?
No, I just think Trump does not like having what all the management.
But are you saying that Kelly is persona non grata?
He's the job. He was brought in to be a traditional strong chief of staff. And we know from all the reporting about this White House that Trump just doesn't like that. He wants to be able to reach down and micromanage the White House. He wants to be his own communications director, his own chief of staff. He wants to run things. And he obviously has a lot more confidence now to pick personnel. During the transition in 2016, he was listening to recommendations of outsiders. Just to take one instance, Tillerson was a recommendation by Condoleezza Rice and Stephen Hadley, sort of bigwig Republican foreign policy people. That era is over. Trump is running his own White House. And, I think we could expect the White House to get more dysfunctional
that
with all
sounds
these
like
changes.
King or dictator or monarch to me. What did you want to say?
Well, it's his White House. He can do what he wants, right?
I know, but come on.
Don, what I think the most important thing in his mind, and what the next question will be, was who is the president going to use to fill Hope Hicks's office?
Is that Dan Scavino?
Director. He's someone that is being talked about, but someone that is more of a presidential confidant, someone he can trust, someone who's been there from the very beginning, who is the keeper of his secrets, and someone who has been with him for a while and can be more of the person that he turns to for how is this playing out in the press? How is this playing out in Congress? How do I need to proceed on this issue? In terms of her role as comms director, this is a different presidency. This is a different president. I expect, and what I'm hearing is we're going to be a restructuring of the comm shop, have someone who is overall the communications director, but also have someone who deals with strategic comms, someone who deals with digital, someone who deals with the press, as with Sarah Sanders.
Alice, that's what you do. You're a communications person. That's when I first met you. You were a communications person. I mean, is this realistic to have one person to deal with all of these jobs? What's wrong with having traditional roles in the White House? That's your expertise.
This restructuring it in terms of, look, there's so many different ways now compared to 2008 or 2000. Digital media, social media, mainstream media to get the message out. And my understanding, they're going to restructure things to fit this president and how he operates. And I expect we're going to see different titles, different roles, different people in those positions. We need the press, some to deal with the immediate impact incoming from the media on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour, minute-by-minute basis, and then a communications director to look at big picture, long-term strategy where he can lay out his agenda and get his message across for his policies.
Who's going to be the person that says, okay, well, when we decide something, the president goes out and says something else, you're going to be the guy or the gal who, takes that job? Who wants that job? Maybe it's Dan Scavino, Matt. So jump in here. By the way, Dan Scavino is the president's social media director. He moved into Hope Hicks's desk this week. We have yet to see if he is offered the job, but aides call Scavino Trump's mini-me. He started as Trump's caddy back in the days. I mean, he's a right guy. What's going on with Dan Scavino here?
Right. Well, I think there's a few things going on here. One, as I think Alice and Ryan both correctly have talked about, is how, anybody who had an independent silo of power is basically being taken out. So if you dare to have some sort of intellectual honesty, you served at the pleasure of the president, but maybe you might question some of the things he did. H.R. McMaster, you can go down the list. It's like the end of The Godfather, right? They're all being taken out.
Which one? 1, 2, or 3?
Wow.
Well, there's only two. There's only two Godfather movies now,
instead of The Godfathers.
Godfather 3 doesn't exist, but anyway.
Maybe it's Goodfellas.
Don, one thing, Don, you mentioned Scavino being his caddy. If you look at what does a caddy do? They carry the bag, they fix the divots, they rake the bunkers, but also they help tell the professional, here's how far you are from the pin. Here's how you're playing out in the field. Here's where you stand overall. And I think Dan Scavino has that role. He can tell the president, look, here's what you need to do long term. Here's how this is being perceived. And he takes all of those things that, the analogy of a caddy has done, and he can do that.
One of the things I wanted to say, though, is
the caddy also lies about your score and tells you that you're great. And you're prettier than anybody else.
This is the other thing, the other sort of pattern here. I'll go quick. Is Trump is now replacing people with these longtime loyalist friends, right? So Dan Scavino was his caddy. He had yesterday, Donald Trump's personal White House physician is now going to, probably head the VA, this huge bureaucracy.
Yeah, it's either long-time sycophants or people who recently have gone on TV and were obsequious in their acclaim for Trump, like the Fox News pundits.
Remember that kid who was pushing the lawnmower? That 11-year-old.
He's going to replace Kelly soon, right?
New head of Department of Interior.
But look, just to follow up on what Alice said, if we no disrespect to Dan Scavino, who seems like a lovely gentleman, if we are relying on Donald Trump's former caddy to be the person that is going to stand up to the president and tell him not to do things that are stupid, we are in far more trouble than I think anyone imagined.
Welcome to reality, Ryan. I mean, come on. And listen, no, I'm not hating on Dan Scavino, but just go back, just scroll through his Twitter feed, if you will, if anyone wants to, before some of it is deleted. Maybe he won't, but just scroll through.
I think he's proud of it. I don't think he's going to delete any of it.
Well, then there you go. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to keep you guys. We'll be right back. Fox News host Laura Ingraham has a big problem on her hands. Back with me now, Ryan Lizza, Matt Lewis, and Alice Stewart. I think we talked about this a little bit earlier in the week, but listen, Matt, 11 advertisers have now jumped ship from Laura Ingraham's show after she mocked shooting survivor David Hogg. Ingraham apologized, but Hogg did not accept. How is this battle shaping up in your mind? Who has the upper hand here, you think?
Oh, he has the upper hand, but let me just say, I think that this is an unfortunate event, as somebody who I've been advising people on my side of the aisle, so people on the right. I've been telling them things for years now, things like, go talk to town hall meetings, go talk where people don't agree with you. And I've been saying, you should apologize. If you do something wrong, if you make a mistake, you should fess up and be honest about it and admit you made a mistake. And the past week, David Hogg has basically proven me wrong on 2 occasions, right? So first, Marco Rubio, who went to this town hall meeting, who has proposed some modest gun reform, bills, reforms. David Hogg gets up on stage at this rally and attacks Marco Rubio, basically saying he has blood on his hands, right? By the way, he also went after, a side note, he went after John McCain, a guy who was in the Hanoi Hilton for 5 years, for getting NRA money. Then Laura Ingraham says something which I think is wrong and stupid, but she apologizes, right? What does he do? Does he take her apology? Is he gracious? Does he accept it? No. What lesson does this teach Republicans and conservatives? The lesson that Donald Trump has always lived by, the lesson that he learned from his mentor, which is this: never admit you're wrong, never apologize.
Maybe it's just that he doesn't believe they're bull. And I don't see what John McCain and being in the Hanoi Hilton has to do with his stance on gun control. You can
John
respect,
McCain.
you
John
can
McCain is
respect
clinging. John McCain is right
hang on,
now.
Let me finish. You can respect what John McCain did as service, but that doesn't. He's still a politician. That is a leader. You can criticize his policies, and I'm sure he would want you to do that.
John McCain right now is fighting for his life. He's had some bad health as of late. He served our country as an American hero, and this high school kid is basically trolling him on Twitter at this moment. I just don't think it's respectful.
He shouldn't do that. If John McCain got it wrong on gun control, then that's another issue. But he shouldn't be trolling John McCain. I understand what you're saying. So he said, why do you take so much money from the NRA? He didn't say that.
It was apropos of nothing, by the way.
He didn't say, I only respect people when they're not captured. He said, why did you take so much money from the NRA? I think that's different. He should
accept Laura Ingram's apology. When people apologize, when they say stupid
things. If the apology if it's an honest, real apology, yes. But if you apologize and it's not a real apology, if you say, in the spirit of Holy Week, why do you have to do it in the spirit of Holy Week? Just say, I'm sorry, I was wrong.
The people that I fight on the right, the people that I fight say, Matt, you're a conservative, you're a wimp. The lesson you have to fight the left. Never admit you make a mistake. Never apologize, because the left will never.
Maybe it wasn't sincere. Maybe they don't believe it was sincere, and then maybe he thinks if he accepts her apology, it'll go back to status quo. She will continue to attack him. The NRA will continue to use them to make money to sell more guns. So maybe this kid knows something that we don't know. Maybe there is a new strategy.
He is driving polarization. He is creating division. We need people who are peacemakers, who bring people together. He is driving.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
I think here's the main problem here is that Laura Ingraham is very opinionated. She always speaks her mind, and she is welcome to do that. And certainly she does so with her new outlet on another network. The problem is when you go after a kid. Granted, this kid has a huge megaphone. He has the
5 seconds, Alice. I'm serious, Alice. I do.
Yeah, and the thing is, just don't attack kids, especially one that's gone through what he's been through.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you. We're out of time. We have a lot to get to. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Don.
We'll be right back. Breaking news in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. A police officer fired today after an investigation into the shooting death of Alton Sterling in 2016, and officials releasing this graphic video of the incident. Police encountered Sterling outside a convenience store, and police body cameras captured what happened. As I said, one officer has been fired, a second officer suspended. Officials say no charges will be filed. Also today in Sacramento, California, an independent autopsy shows that Stephon Clark was shot by police officers 8 times. 6 of those wounds were in his back. So when you consider both these stories and the many, many others like them, it's no surprise that a group of students from Parkland, Florida, students of color, are concerned about the prospect of arming more police in our schools and what that might mean for their safety. Joining me tonight are 2 students from Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, Kai Korber and Tia Amoy Roberts. Thank you so much for joining us. You guys doing okay?
Yeah, we're doing great.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm going to start with you, Tia. You know, you and other minority students, you held a press conference on Wednesday, and I just want to read what you said. You said, the Black Lives Matter movement has been addressing the topic since the murder of Trayvon Martin in 2012, and we have never seen this kind of support for our cause. We surely do not feel that the lives or voices of minorities are valued as much as those of our white counterparts. Why do you feel that way?
Definitely because of the amount of media presence that has been present since what has happened to our school on Valentine's Day. I've never seen that kind of support for Black Lives Matter after somebody, you know, the same color as us, as when their lives were taken. When we go to these rallies, the Never Again rally had so many people, and it spanned across continents. When we have Black Lives Matter rallies, if they are covered at all, they are covered in a negative light a lot of the time. And you did not see that usually with Never Again, unless it was from someone who thinks that we are anti-gun.
Yeah, but you, just to be clear, and I think that, you know, this may get lost on some people, you support Never Again, but what you're saying is that you would like as much support as possible for your cause as well, correct?
Definitely. I say this all the time. I am part of Never Again. You know, I am part of this movement. We are not a separate group. We are not trying to separate ourselves. The fact that I am part of Never Again and that I need everybody to know that we exist within this movement as well.
Mm-hmm. What do you want the public to know, Kai?
Well, I'd like the public to know that, you know, our school is in fact 11% black, and that, you know, we come from a very diverse spectrum of people. So it's not just one demographic that has a voice at our school.
Mm-hmm. Kai, since the shooting, you say that the increased police presence has created new stress for you on campus. Why is that?
Well, just the other day, as a matter of fact, I was stopped by I was actually singled out by one of the BSO, and I was told that I had to re-enter the school through the office, and that if I made it through the office, then I'd be okay to come back in. And this is under the assumption that, as his words, that I wasn't the next school shooter.
Do you think other students will feel safer? I mean, how do you explain to those students why you don't feel the same way? Tia or Kai, whoever wants to answer that.
Right, well, we do know that the police officers inside and outside of a school setting disproportionately target people of color, black people specifically. We know that inside of schools, black people usually get harsher punishments and get punished more often. Detention, suspensions, expulsions, things like that, statistically. And so when you bring these police officers who people of color are already weary of and very aware of into this setting where we are just trying to learn, you open the door up for discrimination, you open the door up for racial profiling, as Kyle gave an example of, and you open the door up for, you know, potentially detrimental situations. And so that's what we're very aware of and trying to show our counterparts.
Yeah. Listen, Kai, you mentioned that African Americans make up 11% of the student body at Stoneman Douglas. And I just want some final words here on how gun violence affects students of color. How does it affect you?
Well, obviously, this is definitely something that our community has been dealing with for generations at this point. So, you know, we feel like that it's, you know, down to a point of our right almost to be a part of the conversation of gun control and of gun regulation, because our community has suffered from it for generations, as I said.
Yeah. Well, listen, I appreciate your time. I understand, you know, the circumstances surrounding this.